Hello, guys. This is a review of the first episode of the Chucky series. This is the first time ever that I do a review of a single episode, but I feel like this one requires it because I really like Chucky. I, of course, own all the movies on DVD. I should have taken them out, but I didn't, sorry. I've only gotten around to reviewing Cult of Chucky, and I might have even deleted that one, maybe, because it's one of my first ones, one of the first reviews I ever did. But anyway, I'm really excited. We finally got it. I know that for the fans, you know that Don Mancini has been talking about this for such a long time, and Jennifer Tilly, has been hinting on, and even like publishing like little snippets when they finally announced the movie. I'm so excited. I was not dissatisfied when I watched this first episode. That's why I was really excited to do a review on it. So let's get started. Let's talk about the plot first, and then I'll get into my opinions, or maybe in between. I don't know. I always mix things up. So this first episode starts with this woman, and I apologize. I've only watched it once. Of course, I'm gonna rewatch it, but I had to do the review like just with my thoughts fresh out of my head. There's this woman with dark, long hair, brushing. She's right there, looking at the mirror, very like Halloween-esque. You know that scene in Halloween? And then we see like the camera moving towards her, and it turns out that it's you think it's Chucky, but it's I think Charles Lee Ray when he was a kid. And she carries him, and then that's when the scene ends. And then we start with the real, I would say, protagonist, which would be Jake. Jake is a 14-year-old kid who's taking his medication. What is that medication for? I should have turned on the subtitles because I really didn't get that. He was talking with his dad, and his dad was like, "Oh, have you taken your meds?" And he was like, "Oh, not yet." So take them because your aunt is gonna come, your uncle and aunt and your cousin are gonna come. So it was okay. I think it's for anxiety. I mean, that's what I presume. Jake, is very unique, very peculiar. He's gay, and he doesn't have a lot of friends, doesn't have a very big social circle. That's what we know from the get-go. He's very passionate about art, especially like what is it called when abstract art. So he has this like statue, we could say, this work of art that is composed of different body parts of dolls, and that's what he likes to work on. He goes to a yard sale, and that's where he sees Chucky. He gets a very good bargain. He buys. I'm so nervous. I keep stuttering because like I've like redone, and I'm not gonna restart because I restarted probably like 50 times. I get really nervous when I talk about like shows or movies that I really really like, and I really like Chucky. That's why I'm just like I'm just very excited. So I'm sorry, but okay, we're just gonna keep it. He buys it for $10, right? And he sees on the internet that he's worth like 1,000 because it's like one of the original dolls and whatnot. And he goes over to school in the hopes of like finding somebody who's wanting to buy it. Well, I should say that before that, he has dinner with his uncle, who's his dad's brother, his uncle's wife, and his cousin Junior. And there they have a very colorful conversation where they just like they are not coming to any agreement in terms of anything. For example, his dad is a hard like hands-on worker, and his uncle, he's a businessman and apparently very successful. He offers to help his dad, and his dad obviously takes offense to it but doesn't admit to it, because logically when you're put in that situation, I would know, where like someone is a lot more successful than you are, at least in terms of like money, and then they offer to help, you might have a lot of pride, so you will say no, and you might take offense to it even. I also saw that in that 70 show. I don't know if you remember when Red lost his job, and then his friend offered to hire him at his I forgot, his shop, and he was like, like, is that? And then his friend's like, it's not charity, Red. charity. Like you wouldn't even think about that, but that's, I'm sorry for going off topic, that's what happens there. There's a lot of friction. And then to like make matters even worse, Junior, who's Jake's cousin, as I mentioned earlier, he's like, just say that you're gay, man, like it's the 21st century, like it's okay now. And his dad obviously gets mad and even like breaks a glass, because Junior's dad, I think, is also like kind of insane. It's like, oh yeah, like, the dad tells him like he's 13, how is he going to know what he is, he's so young. And then Jake's like, I'm 14, dad. And then that's how it ends. They say goodbye, and his dad warns him that he doesn't want to see any more dolls. Well, actually, by the time he had already warned him, but by the time Jake goes back inside after saying goodbye to his family members, he hears like loud sounds, like there's a lot of ruckus going on in his room. So he hurries there, and he sees that his dad has um, destroyed his work of art, the one where he pasted the dolls, like I said. And that's a very clear representation of him not wanting him to be gay. He tells him, no more dolls, no more dolls, like you're not going to do this anymore. And obviously the problem is not that, well, obviously his fascination with these type of things is not the usual um, pastimes that kids his age have, but the real problem is that he's gay, and like we all know it. By the way, one of the first scenes that I like that really caught my attention when I was watching the show was the Outsiders poster. I haven't reviewed that movie either. That movie by Francis Ford Coppola is just so amazing. It has Tom Cruise in it. It has like a bunch of very very notable actors, but it's not about that. It's like the movie. It's so amazing. I really like it. So when I saw the poster, and I think that I even saw another poster with Morrissey from the Smiths. I might be mistaken, but I was like, I'm digging every single thing that happens. So back to what I was saying, Jake is very heartbroken. He takes Chucky to school the next day, and he sees Lexi. Lexi is Junior's girlfriend. Before that, if I'm not mistaken, this well, it doesn't really matter, the chronological order, I don't think matters. There's this classmate that goes over to Jake, and he's like, oh, can you introduce me to your cousin Junior? And he's like, well, actually he's not he's trying to say that he's not gay. So then he sees that he has a girlfriend. So I guess that scene implies that it's kind of more acceptable to to be part of the LGBT community nowadays, and it is. So I appreciate that, but at the same time, I appreciate the fact that they didn't shy away from seeing the ugly side. That even though people are accepting it, it's something that I talked to my friend about recently. I was mentioning how I have worked in schools, like everything, elementary, middle school, high school. And I've seen that, yes, back in my days, that it wasn't that long ago, but back in my days, it was a lot different. Now it's a lot more open. But I think that it's this fake bubble of openness. It's just this new, we could say, like, like the kids say, this woke culture that is not really woke. I think we have a lot of demons, a lot of skeletons in our closet. So we try, like the new generations, especially, and even us millennials, we try to say that we support this and you're wrong, and we point the finger and we condemn and we cancel and we do this and we do all of that because we feel guilty ourselves for everything that we said. Take Shane Dawson, for example, and I know that this is a very controversial subject, but I have to speak my mind. That's what I'm here to do. And it relates to what we're talking about the show with Shane Dawson. Like he never he, as far as I know, he didn't commit a crime. There are like child murderers out there, like real child rapists, female rapists, rapists of all kind. There are like serial killers on the loose. There are like terrorists, all these type of people. But we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about a YouTuber who had a very dark and inappropriate sense of humor. Back in those days, it wasn't the same as it is now, dudes. And anybody, whatever gender you are, back in the day, I remember, like, I used to be like, what, 8, 9, 10, and I would be laughing at these type of jokes. It was just funny because we didn't know any better. No one told us. And of course, ignorance is not an excuse under the eyes of the law, but this isn't a legality issue, you know? This is just entertainment. He learned, he apologized, and he moved on. And people still keep going and going and going as if he's like your cousin or like your boyfriend or your dad, and you just can't, you don't even know him. You know, he's already apologized profusely, and people just won't let go of it. And you know why? That's why I'm saying all of this, because we have guilt that we either really enjoy or have enjoyed inappropriate comedy, inappropriate action. Sometimes you see like the bros like, oh, look at that hoe, and then you're like, ah, and then you feel guilt, so you're like, oh, you're toxic masculinity and this and that. Like, we're not perfect, none of us are perfect. Let's open our ears, let's be willing to teach others, and if they want to learn, they'll learn, and if they don't, then they don't. Let them go their way. I don't know why we always have like this rivalry and this I don't know, conflict going on every single day of our lives. That's basically what I feel um happens here, and then I'll talk a little bit more about that and how it relates to it later. But Lexi is all like, oh my goodness, so that's a very beautiful doll. She's talking about Chucky, of course. I hope that you're not going to like destroy it or break it apart for your art. And he says, no, I'm actually wanting to sell it. And she's very sarcastic. Oh, do you need help? Like, you're struggling financially. That's not something to be ashamed of, Jake. Like, it's okay. And she starts walking away, and her boyfriend Junior tells her something like, oh, you should give him a break, like, something like that. And I'm like, wow. So there's something very fishy about the cousin. I have a lot of suspicions in regards to him. So that happens, right? And then later they're in science class, and Jake is not really wanting to cut open the frog. They're dissecting a frog, and they're talking about how it's important. Sometimes you have to do like these gruesome things in order to learn more. We wouldn't be where we are in terms of like science if there wasn't somebody willing to open up people and animals and plants to study them. But he's like it's why, like he's disgusted by it. And Chucky obviously slices it, but that's not really the point. The point here is that um people are bullying him like left and right, right? And then they hear a notification. I think their phone vibrates, everybody's phone in the class, and they see that they started a GoFundMe page for Jake. And obviously it wasn't done with good intentions. It was full on malice, like from beginning to end by Lexi's part, and the teacher asks Lexi to stay behind so they could have a chat. Lexi, obviously being the typical bully that she is, she sits down and tells her, you know what? Um, it's not a crime to want to help other people who are struggling. And the teacher tells her, like, I was like you when I was in school. I was arrogant, I was entitled, I was bratty. And then the girl's like, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to end up being a 8th grade science teacher. So she always has a rebuttal for everything that the teacher says. And she tells her, I suppose that the best thing to do now is to call the principal. Maybe you can tell her what you just told me. And she said, oh, sure. Like, she goes to the same Pilates class as my mom. So she calls her over, and she leaves her in the room, the teacher, as she goes to ask for the principal to come over with her. And Lexi sees that because Chucky was left there by Jake. Jake asks the teacher if she could take care of him because it doesn't fit in his locker, his big old head. I forgot to mention that in the beginning, Jake was wanting to rip him out. Rip him up, but he couldn't, obviously, because Chucky is not a regular doll that you could just like break apart. If you were to cut his head off, and blood would splatter everywhere. Logic. That was gonna be because of science, that's why. So Chucky starts moving around while he's locked in there with Lexi, and he scares her. She drops her phone, she doesn't know where it's at, and by the time the teacher and the principal get back, Lexi is frightened. And she's like, you know what, I'm sorry, yeah, what I did was wrong, I'll take the page down, but I should stop smoking so much weed. And she leaves. The principal's like, oh, that was a lot easier than I expected. There's going to be a talent show, right? And I also forgot to mention that Jake is interested in Junior's best friend. He has a podcast where he talks about death and crimes and all of this very interesting stuff, and he offers Jake to be on his podcast with him so that they could discuss the very important subject of bullying. Jake at first is seems interested. Obviously, he likes him, so he's like, okay, okay. But then he feels, and I don't know, he takes it the wrong way. He feels like, as he tells him, you think I'm the poster boy for like losers. I'm not gonna be part of it, and he walks away. And as far as I can see, I don't think that that's the kid's intention to to ridicule him, further ridicule him, I should say. And then the camera goes over to a scene with his cousin Junior, and he looks a little bit distraught, like a little bit. I don't know, I might be looking too much into it, but I think, if I'm willing to take a wild guess here, I think that Junior is also gay and he likes his best friend. That's why he's a little bit jealous, because there's no other reason. For example, he is kind of a butthole to his cousin, a real butthole to his cousin sometimes, but at the same time, like, he talks to Lex and he's like, oh, you shouldn't be like so messed up to him. So I think that it's not so much that he hates him, it's that he's kind of jealous that he's himself and that he might have an opportunity with his best friend. But I could be wrong. So the talent show happens, and Lexi's, out there shining. The first presentation, and the only presentation that we actually get to see thus far, is of Junior's best friend. I think he plays the piano, sings a little song, I think. But that's irrelevant. She starts making fun of Jake in front of everybody in the auditorium. And that's when somebody yells out that she should pick on someone her own size. And that someone is Chucky, of course. He whispers in Jake's ear. Jake is obviously like, I thought I threw you away in the trash, because that's what he did. I forgot to mention that as well, of course. But he hugs him, he carries him, and like I said, Chucky whispers in his ear, like, let's go. You're gonna do everything that I tell you to do. You're gonna pretend that you're a ventriloquist and I'm just your dummy. And they go over to the mic, and obviously Lexi's like, oh, what are you doing? And he starts like throwing dirt on everyone. He starts roasting people, especially Lexi. He takes out her phone and it's like, oh, so you've also been in contact with so and so. I see. Everybody here has secrets, and being gay is not something to be ashamed of, but you're an asshole. I should have said butthole. But that's what she is. And he keeps burning her, burn after burn, until she's like full on like turkey roasted. And then he points the camera at the people metaphorically. He tells them, so you see, it's funny to make fun of another person. Like, I'm here telling you how much of a bad person she is, but yet when I'm attacking her, you guys are still laughing. You're still, how can I explain this? And this is what it relates to also to what I was saying. We want to be part of the group no matter what, right? For the most part, people, especially at that age, you want to be accepted. And even as adults, like, we just jump on the bandwagon. Oh, it's cool to hate somebody. Oh, let's go. Let's all hate on that person. And then we say, oh, but it's bad what you did to so and so. You were really mean to Sandra. That's awful, Katie. Katie, you are an awful person. Like, and we go right, but then we're doing the same thing to Katie, the same thing that Katie did to Sandra. You know what I'm saying? It's just like a never-ending cycle of pointing the finger, so that you don't have to own up and take responsibility for what you did. Like, focus on yourself. I feel like that's the whole message, not of the show, but the whole message that I was trying to say. Like, is focus on you. If there's something wrong that you see, try not to do it yourself, learn from your mistakes, and move on. And then hopefully the other people get there. If they don't, then that's on them. And they'll have the appropriate consequences if their acts are like violent or whatever it may be. So that happens, and Lexi's obviously very, very, I don't feel bad for her. Like, to be honest, I don't feel bad at all. She runs off with her phone, and then Jake goes back to school. His father is waiting for him, really pissed off, and he tells him, you know, the teacher called, and he said, it wasn't my fault, it wasn't me. He's like, you know what? You're suspended. And then Jake, like, they get into an argument that escalates, and Jake yells at him, you're just mad at me because I'm the F word. And then his dad punches him, and he starts bleeding, and he runs up the stairs and is like, I hate you, I wish you would die. And it's that, you know, the very typical like teen anger moment that we see in a lot of movies and shows where they shine the light on these type of things. But it's very relatable. I feel like I've known people that haven't really had much of that, like, if anything at all. Like, well, not many people, just like maybe one or two, where they're like, oh, well, my relationship was just so awesome. And that's great, because I think that you shouldn't really get to that point with your parents at all. It might happen, and it's not the end of the world, but it really shouldn't, if there's, you know, if there's open dialogue and everything. But the majority of people really do clash heads with their parents, and that's a feeling that it's so intense that I can relate to it so well, not just with parents but with other people that, you know, that were bullies. But he runs off, right? And then he sees that Chucky is still he takes Chucky away, I think, prior to the altercation. And then Chucky walks, my feet are going to sleep, sorry, my leg, I should say. So Chucky makes it down to the basement and turns the power off. Then his dad, he's been drinking, he goes down there, and there's like, I don't know what he did, but there's cables that are cut, and, like, you know, electricity just like sparks flying everywhere. And Chucky had drank his bottle of liquor, but he didn't really drink it. He kept it in his mouth, you know, like chipmunks with their nuts. And he spits it on the ground where his dad is standing, so that it electrocutes him and he dies. By the time Jake comes down, he sees that his dad is like, ah, which is super cool, because it also has like little electricity things. Like, I don't know if it's a reflection on his eye or it's coming out of his eye, but that's really cool, because that reminds me a lot of the, like, of the 80s 90s special effects, you know, with the light beams and everything. So he dies. Obviously he's not gonna survive that. Like, I wanted him to survive, because I wanted his relationship with his son to come full circle. I thought that it was gonna be more about that, but I mean, we still have I don't know how to pronounce his name, Devon Sawa or Devon Sawa. You know, the actor from Final Destination, that I also really like. I really like that movie. I really, really like him as an actor. So I'm really pleased that at least he could be the dad of Junior, even though he has less character. Not that I want him to be abusive, but, you know, whatever. That's what it is. And his uncle goes and takes him to his house. Before that, the detectives ask Jake a few questions, and he answers them. They're a bit suspicious, but for the most part, they're like understanding. They're like, oh, you know, I have my son that goes to your same school. I can imagine what you're going through. When he gets to his house, his aunt shows him to his room, and she tells him, what did you mean by we all have secrets? Because that's something that Chucky said while pretending to be a dummy. And he said, oh, nothing, I was just trying to be funny. And then you see that his cousin Junior is upset that he has to stay with them. And as he closes the door, he just stares at him, and he stares at Chucky as well. And the episode ends with Chucky telling him, or suggesting, that they kill Lexi. So that's what happens. I think, you know what? My feelings in regards to the show, like, I was looking over my past review about Satan's Little Helper, and my eyes sparkle when I talk about horror movies. It's just, I just really like horror movies. for some reason, and I'm very passionate about them. I don't know if you could see, like, I got my nerves down, so I've been able to express my thoughts and my feelings a little bit more as this review went on. I don't know if you could tell, even though I am losing my voice because I can't really I'm terrible at listening to myself, like being able to know when I'm screaming or when I'm like talking in different. But anyway, my point is that, to be honest, I don't mind if those people die. Like, that's a problem. The only thing that I could see in this show is that you have to really, really give me character growth for the other possible victims, because as of right now, the aunt, maybe even the uncle, the cousin, and his girlfriend, they could all die. I don't care. And of course, we're talking about the show, like, no drama here. I think that anybody who's mentally sane knows that when you're talking about horror movies, you're going to want to see people get killed. But I want to make sure that if you're not completely in a well, like, the right state of mind, you realize that obviously murder is wrong. You do not do that. This is just a show. But now that I got that disclaimer out of the way, yeah, I want them all to die, of course. Lexi especially, but I would want her to really regret everything that she's doing. Gosh, it's just so delicious. Like, I wonder what Chucky's going to do. Am I the only one that's just like, I want to see what else he could come up with? I am really looking forward to the deaths because Chucky has some of the best deaths. He's one of my favorite slasher villains. Like, we have, I don't know if he could be considered like a slasher villain, but the Creeper's my number one villain, period, of all time, from Jeepers Creepers. And then, I don't know, I guess it would be Chucky and Michael Myers. I really don't know. I think maybe Chucky a little bit more, but I don't know. And they had a cameo. Did you guys see the cameo with Chucky and Michael? He kind of destroys a pumpkin, the jack-o'-lantern, and he's like, "What? You didn't like it?" So that was pretty cool. A very nice treat, especially since Halloween Kills is coming out tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I look forward to that. I think that a round of applause for the representation that we got. I think who better to do it than Don Mancini, somebody that's actually in the LGBT community. It's amazing. I love how they're not giving him a one-dimensional thing and they're not making it all about that. I don't mind it if they make it all about that, if that's like a drama or like coming of age film and that's like the main topic and everything. But I feel like for Chucky, since it's we want kills, we want action, we want suspense, we want humor, we get all of that, and they're taking note, they're being very honest. I feel like this isn't really, it doesn't look fake, in the sense that a lot of people go through this. I know firsthand what it's like to go through this, and it's very difficult. And he had it a lot worse, and I'm glad that my parents didn't die. But I mean the whole, like, not being accepting of who he is, and then the whole glass acceptance that people have. Like, it's so easy to like I said, jump on the bandwagon and just, oh yeah, we support you, but it's like, you're gay. That's not real support. That's just stupidity. That's just being sheep, following everybody around, saying what is appropriate or what you think is going to get the most praise by others. So I like that they're doing that. Like I said, I really want to see character development for the possible victims, or else I'm going to be cheering for Chucky all the way. I really dislike that Jake's dad died, because like I said earlier, they're not gonna have their moment of seeing the light. His mom passed away, so his dad took it the hardest. And I forgot to mention that there's a very funny scene when they're in the new room at his uncle's house, and they're talking. He's like, I didn't want him to die, like, he was so cool before. It's just that when my mom died, he couldn't cope. And Chucky's like, oh, I thought you were talking about the cat. He's so funny and so unexpectedly, I don't know, he has the right timing. I don't know how Don Mancini does is, but he puts humor in the most like weird weirdest of ways. Is that correct to say? I don't know, but it's just so unexpected and awesome and very enjoyable. Like I said earlier, I don't know if I did say it earlier, but they do have a bigger budget for this show. I heard Jennifer Tilly say that in an interview. I really don't want to hear spoilers, but I had to watch at least part of it, and she mentions that the sets are amazing and it shows. I like I said for my other review, Satan's Little Helper, you don't need a big budget. You don't need explosions and fancy camera work and this equipment to make a very good film or show. If you have the heart, if you have the right mindset, and you know everybody takes it seriously, and you respect art, and you don't sell out, that's amazing. But I feel for Chucky, we've already had that before. So we've already had the low budget films. He's been growing since decades, so I think it's only fair for him to get the respect that he deserves. We know that Don Mancini takes his work seriously. We know that he goes in like full throttle. So I think that it's very acceptable and appropriate for him to receive the budget that he deems necessary to create this new entry. Like if I was a millionaire, I would have invested. I would have been like, dude, I trust you 100%. Like you've done it. He didn't do it once or twice, and no, like he's done it for so many years, and he talks about it with a lot of passion. I respect that about artists. I respect that he's also very loyal. He keeps bringing the characters back, like Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany, whom I'm very excited to see. I'm also very intrigued about the possible backstory revelations of Charles Lee Ray as well as Tiffany. I'm just very excited overall, and I've been talking for such a long time that I feel like I need to shut up right at this moment, and I will be quiet. I think that's it for this one. I hope to maybe be able to rewatch the movies and do an episode and a review of the movie, so that I have something else to talk about in relation to this. But yeah, let me know what you think without spoiling it if you'd like. And that's it for this one. I can't give the overall rating, but the rating for this episode, I would say it's a 10 out of 10. I like it thus far. And that's it for this one. Thank you for watching.